20 years in Israel at that point, had founded a super successful venture business. And so I spent months kind of running up and down the East Coast of the United States.
For the 1/3 of Olim that go back within 3 years, what percentage of them would you say is because of professional reasons as opposed to going to continue education, maybe they wanted to be near, they wanted to build a family near their parents?
I would say that the majority of those are because of professional, right? You don't come to Israel saying, I'm going to make Aliyah to Israel, but I'm thinking about an MBA at Stanford. And as we're in this moment of significant challenge, if we don't get and keep amazing global talent in this country, we don't fulfill our potential. If you want to reach out to people on LinkedIn, say, can I meet you for coffee? If you have a friend of a friend or a cousin of someone or anyone that you have met, I came with 2 children that I had already given birth to in the United States, and this is before I gave birth to my 3rd here. I moved to Herzliya, which is another kind of strike against me as an Ola because I moved to a suburb. I live with Israelis. I actually live in Israel, right? There's no other Anglos around me.
Welcome to another episode of IsraelTech. I'm excited to have with me Abbey Onn, the Executive Director of Nevo. Abby, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
But before we get started, the first thing I would like for you to do is go ahead and hit follow and subscribe and share with your friends. What we're trying to do is bring the IsraelTech ecosystem to everyone and make it as accessible by decentralizing and democratizing it. And we can only do this with your help. Abby, so let's get started.
Great.
First thing I wanted to understand, what exactly is Nevo? As an immigrant myself, I hear a lot about it, but I've really just got to kind of get to know it through a friend of mine just in the last few months. Can you kind of get us up to speed?
Happy to. So it is an Israeli nonprofit that we founded in 2020, Michael Eisenberg and myself, to answer the need for immigrants or Olim in Israel to build a professional network and a community, and in essence create a sense of belonging in Israel. Often immigrants, when they come, don't either have the Hebrew language, they haven't served in the army, they haven't studied here, they don't have family members, which you wouldn't necessarily have in the country that you were born in. And it becomes really hard to find a job and advance professionally. And we found that when people don't advance, they often won't stay in Israel for the long term.
So how did you find out that this was a problem?
Michael and I started working together in 2020. There were a group of funders and leaders who were really passionate about figuring out what was the kind of next thing after Taglit, after birthright. Right, which was this huge splash that brought a ton of people to Israel. And he said, let's build the next thing. Let's figure out how we bring the highest potential talent to Israel to work in tech. And I said, awesome, who doesn't want to work with Michael Eisenberg? 20 years in Israel at that point, had founded a super successful venture business. And so I spent months kind of running up and down the East Coast of the United States, meeting with as many HR people in Israel as I could to really understand what the need was. And then I came back after I think 4 months and told this venture leader that the idea was a bad one and it didn't make sense. That there was an entire ecosystem of organizations that was focused on bringing people to Israel, on the kind of attraction, if you would, piece of the Aliyah journey, and convinced Michael that that wasn't the idea we should work on. And he looked at me, he said, okay, what's next? And I was like, and you never come to this meeting without another idea. And I said, look, in the very little research that exists, I found that 1 in 3 English-speaking Olim will leave Israel within 3 years. Either they didn't fall in love, which was not an area that I wanted to get involved in.
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe that's the next stages in a row. Or they couldn't find a job. And I looked at Michael and said, look, you have built one of the best networks as an Ole in tech in Israel. Let me leverage that. Let me not focus on the attraction, let me focus on the retention. If we can build a successful professional network for Olim, not only will it benefit the tech ecosystem and Israel's economy, but they then will become the next level of what attracts other people to want to come to Israel, other Olim to move here.
I want to ask about actually the last point first. How does one, let's say they're established in tech, how do they help bring people here?
A number of ways, right? It's 2025. So they could simply share on Instagram what it looks like to work in tech and what they do every day. They could go back to their community and speak to the Jewish school, the federation, the camp, or they could just kind of live their life here and keep their connections at home and say, I'm succeeding, right? I think if you think about those 1 in 3 that went home, they didn't go home and say, Israel was amazing, I just didn't make it. They said, that was really hard and it sucked and I didn't know people and no one helped me and I didn't get the job I wanted and I'm much more valuable in my home country.
What I find is also just how humans act, right? We make emotional decisions, then we rationalize later. Someone may go back home, let's say they're from the United States as an example,
Right.
and then they'll start to paint a more negative picture of their experience
1000%.
so they can rationalize because their goal was to move here permanently,
Right.
but they failed.
Right. And so I think when I looked at the kind of ecosystem of organizations, I thought, look at all the money going into Aliyah, and the return on investment, 33% of the time is a fail. I want to impact that bottom line and say, even if you go home, right, it's okay that you don't stay in Israel forever, but go home because you wanted to get a second degree. Go home because you were beginning to have children and you wanted to be closer to your family. I can't fight with this stuff, right?
Right.
You can't say that forever Aliyah is for everyone.
Right.
But we want to make sure that if you're going home, it's not because you didn't find your way professionally in Israel.
I love that.
And that takes mentorship and community and some level of, social life. There's a lot that goes into what we do at Nevo, but it's building a sense of belonging for people to know that if they have a challenge, there's a community of people that are going to help them solve it.
Before we continue, let me tell you about our partners, The Recruitery. The Recruitery places go-to-market talent for early and growth stage cybersecurity companies. The Recruitery specializes in recruiting and retaining top talent in global markets. If you're looking for a recruitment company to help your cybersecurity company close cultural gaps and find great talent on the ground that can help you scale, we recommend you also partnering with our partner, The Recruitery. And now, back to the show. For those that do end up going back, do you find many of them end up returning to Israel?
Right now, we have 150 people that have gone through the kind of fellowship cohort of Nevo and are what we would consider members of the organization. 10% have left. And we know, because I just did a survey in 2025, that though about 60% of them left either to study or be closer to family. So the ones that are studying, I have hope that they will come back. The ones that move to be closer to family, I really hope that they keep a strong connection with IsraelTech, but I don't expect that they're going to come back. But that's a handful of people.
And the other 40% was because of professional reasons, or?
No, it was not because of professional reasons. I would say that it was for diverse reasons. I would say that the war certainly played a piece in it. Our first cohort kicked off during the pandemic. So I think also pandemic plus war played a piece in it. But I would say that the majority are because of studying or family.
So for the 1/3 of Olim that go back within 3 years, what percentage of them would you say is because of professional reasons as opposed to going to continue education, maybe they wanted to be near, they wanted to build a family near their parents?
I would say that the majority of those are because of professional, right? You don't come to Israel saying, I'm going to make Aliyah to Israel, but I'm thinking about an MBA at Stanford.
Maybe we should talk about what age we're talking about, because there's different stages, right?
Yeah.
So we're probably talking about people under 28 or something like that, I would assume.
I'm talking about 25 to 35.
Right, okay.
In general.
Okay.
In these years where you're often
basically post-college before your career takes off.
Post-college, you might be early in your relationship or marriage. But I don't think if you make this big jump to make Aliyah, and not just move to Israel, but to make Aliyah, that you're thinking, I'm going to go back and do a second degree within those first 3 years. I think if you leave within 3 years, it's because you couldn't find your way here professionally, or there's something didn't click.
So how can we help make things click? Well, we're definitely going to unpack the professional stuff. Let's talk about the social aspect, right? So the good news is, let's say, and we're talking about those coming from the West largely, right, is that most people here speak English, and especially talking about networking within tech, and there's enough English speakers that they can find people that they can connect with.
Yeah.
So how does Nevo, or how do people, or even without Nevo, those that aren't, Olim, not interested even in tech, how do they find and build a community if they don't have anyone?
Right. Look, I will say that currently Nevo works with people from 23 countries and about 10 languages. So I would say that the needs of Olim writ large are pretty diverse. And that if you have strong English, you're in a much better position to begin building. I would say some people come, and the percentage is smaller, that are going to study here or serve. But again, those are less common. If you're coming, let's say 25 years old, you've done a first degree in somewhere in North America, you've worked for a handful of years and you come here, you are in essence looking for people from your hometown, distant cousins. You get a internship through something like Masa or IsraelTech Challenge when it existed. And the main challenge that we identified is, even if you get that first job, you often get stuck in trying to figure out how to get the second job, because you're within your one company. So while you may know some Israelis, they're not the ones you can turn to say, help me get my next job, because they're the ones you currently work with. right? So we needed to think, how do we first build a community of Olim that are going to help each other? And then the second layer is, how do we then connect those Olim to Israelis who need to then think about valuing Olim and knowing that Olim are going to help build the tech ecosystem stronger, and knowing that we can't, as immigrants, exist in a shtetl. Right? We can't only be for ourselves. We have to be part of this larger country that we've chosen to be part of.
Right. So in a sense, we need to build our own community, and then we need to connect that community to a greater community.
Right.
Right. So for one that makes Aliyah, or someone that has someone in their family make Aliyah and they want to help them get settled, how does one get involved in Nevo so they can help find that community?
Sure. Okay, so Nevo is peculiar in some sense because it is a fellowship that lasts for 10 months. That the kind of number one thing that we ask is that people have been in Israel for 2 years. Because when we looked again at this ecosystem of attraction versus retention, there are a lot of organizations focused on bringing people and that initial acclimation, and not people focused on how you stay here for the long term. I want people that want to have already gotten through the 2 years, have gotten through the bureaucracy, have showed up at the post office when it was closed, got pushed on the bus, got yelled at in the supermarket, got through the hard stuff.
It's like growth stage investing if it was early stage.
I want you when you're ready to grow professionally, and not when you need advice on how to read a lease, how to read a contract, sure, but how to read a lease, I want you through that part.
Right.
And so people that have been here for a minimum of 2 years come into this fellowship, and the fellowship is 10 months long. And it's roughly 30 people every year. It's super diverse, where they're from, where they work, what they do. And we really focus on building individuals and building the cohort so that they feel like, in essence, if we can align it with something that exists in Israel, if we think about Shmona Matayim, if we think about 8200 as this really top elite unit for the military, we want to say this is the top elite unit of Olim. We want to build them as...
I love that, by the way. I love that. That's great.
As well as we can, so that they become the leaders of the ecosystem, so that they not only themselves have grown, but they are multipliers of impact.
You want to leverage the impact.
Yeah, that they're paying it forward. That we know that of the 150 people that are active in our network right now, they have advised or mentored 1,000 Olim this year. That they put on events for 500 plus Olim this year, whether they've taught or spoke or done other things that have inspired or helped other Olim. We're in the thousands at this point. That's our goal, is that we're investing in a few so that they impact many.
Amazing. So, but if 1/3 of, was it 2/3 leave within 3 years? 1/3 leave within 30 years? But you're not getting involved till they're here at least 2 years.
Right. It's a question.
Are you really helping?
It's a question, because I think that we're trying to catch them before they go. We're trying to figure out.
Before they do. So do you partner with the organization to help them kind of land here and settle? So I don't know, Nefesh B'Nefesh, there are other organizations that they're younger, and like, do you partner with them and then maybe find some talent people that you think would be good for the network? Is that how you operate?
Yeah, so we, in our second year, I think, created something called the IsraelTech Roundtable, where we partnered with Nefesh and Vahim and IsraelTech Challenge, again, when they existed, and with Masa and with Sales Course and with Reboot, that was created by some of our fellows at the time and some other Olim to help Russian speakers in the aftermath of the Ukraine war, to think writ large about the ecosystem, because I think a lot of people exist in silos. And what we said is there is a path, and we want to think about how Olim go through the path and where we each add value and how we can partner. And so we work with all of these organizations to figure out who are the high potential people that we can help elevate that are going to help the whole community.
So even though you may not be relevant or Nevo immediately, someone wants to make Aliyah, they're post-college, they want to get into tech, they're not ready for them. What advice would you give to them about landing and expanding for them to be able to help network and get their way into tech, or through Nevo or not?
Sure.
What do you recommend to people?
A couple of things. One, I'll say, leave your house. You are not going to get anywhere in Israel if you're sitting in your house and you're in front of a screen all the time.
Totally.
You have to meet people.
It's also a lot of fun.
Yeah. And also, it's gorgeous.
I know.
Right? We live in it's a good place to do it. Go hang out at Sarona, go hang out at Monty, go hang out at a cafe and meet people. No matter what. If you want to reach out to people on LinkedIn, say, can I meet you for coffee? If you have a friend of a friend or a cousin of someone or anyone that you have met, say, can I meet you for coffee? Because every single one of those coffees is going to turn into something else. And you might have to do 100 of them, and you might have to do 3. You never know. But in the kind of long-term vision, they're going to benefit you because they're going to help you create that sense of belonging that without meeting people and knowing them is going to be really hard. So one of the things that we created at Nevo is a database. So every single person that's gone through our program is in this database, and they're open to meeting you for coffee. So any new Ole that comes to me, or new Ola, which many come, and say, I need help. or I want to apply to this specific company or role, or I don't know what to do, I say there's 150 people who are ready to meet you and help you and advise you. And I think this notion that you're not here on your own, but that there's a community of people that are ready and waiting to make sure that you have the connections you need.
Ready and waiting, I like that, the waiting.
Is a big deal. And I think it didn't exist before Nevo.
So if I know someone is fresh off the boat, so to speak, and wants to get into the tech ecosystem,
that's what I
would send them to Nevo, even though they wouldn't be in the cohort.
They're not in the cohort, but
they can you'll help
there's
them.
all these people that are here saying, number one, there's a database. Number two, we run events.
Are people using and like involved with that? Because I'm just saying from the outside, I thought it was I got very sense that it's just the cohorts, and either if you're not in the cohort, either you're in the network or out of the network kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think confusing to a lot of
people.
Yeah,
maybe you want to tell us a little bit what you do. A little bit more.
To be a network member, you've gone through the fellowship, and you're someone who's kind of this active part of this 150, soon to be 180. We're choosing our sixth cohort now in the spring of 2025. But what our theory is that if we invest in these 150, they're going to push out impact. So the database is their impact. The events are their impact. We're going to start running webinars. That's their impact. They're teaching at a number of different events and conferences. This is the impact, right? So we want to say that we deeply invest in few. They then push out impact to many. So I know from that database this year that they have mentored 1,000 Olim, right? That's insane. That's something that before this you might have had a few conversations, but now people are able to say, I want to speak to someone that works at Monday.com. I want to speak to a marketeer. I need to speak to a Russian speaker or a Spanish speaker or a German speaker. And you can go to this list and you can identify who works at those companies, who works in those roles, who's from the same country as I am, and begin to build connections. I meet a ton of people who come into Nevo cohort 4, 5, or 6 and say, my first conversations in Israel were because of Nevo. I'm working in tech right now because of Nevo. I got an email last night from a cohort 2 fellow. It said, my girlfriend just got her job because of Nevo. She's not a fellow. She was connected.
Amazing.
Right, so the idea is that anytime I ask someone, can you speak to another Ole, the answer is always yes.
So what is your personal story that got you into wanting to help Olim so much? What is it? Why does that pull you?
Look, I'm an Ola myself. I've been in Israel for 10 years, and I came to Israel after working in the United States for 15 years. I worked both in the nonprofit space and higher education, my last job being at the Harvard Kennedy School, directing leadership development. And I came and thought, okay, I have all this experience. I'm excited to create something big in Israel, and finding a job here was really, really hard. I came with 2 children that I had already given birth to in the United States, and this was before I gave birth to my 3rd here, and had to try to figure out how to balance all of this stuff. And at the same time, I'm married to Oded, who I like to describe as a unicorn. We talk about companies as unicorns. My husband is one. He is Israeli-born, native Hebrew speaker, degree from Tel Aviv University in computer science and history, because why not have 2? Served in Shlonim Time for 4.5 years, has an MBA from UNC, worked in the United States, and has never looked for a job in Israel because everything I just said.
Right.
Language, service, family.
They found him. The jobs, they reached out to him, right?
To this day, we're in Israel for 10 years, and he's never had to look for a job. They find him.
Right.
And so here I am trying to say, okay, where can I apply? Who can I meet? Who do I know? And I moved to Herzliya, which is another kind of strike against me as an Ola, because I moved to a suburb. I live with Israelis. I actually live in Israel, right? There's no other Anglos around me.
Right.
And I had to build from the ground up.
Was that your decision? Did you seek that out, or you're like...
His family lives near us.
Okay, so you didn't. Okay.
We live far enough away from his family, but very close still.
Okay, so I moved to Pardes Chana 12 years ago because of that, and Nefesh B'Nefesh came and like, oh look, an Anglo in Pardes Chana.
They didn't find me in Herzliya.
Right, they didn't find you, sure. And so they ended up, they came over, did like a whole thing, they wanted to do a whole profile in Pardes Chana.
Wow.
And I didn't want more Anglos, so I was like,
shh.
I was talking shit about the place. It's like, you need 2 cars, things are so expensive. It's like, these are out of control. Like I went all out. Because I wanted to live amongst Israelis.
Yeah, on one hand, it's been amazing for me because it made me learn to speak Hebrew, and it made me learn to be an Israeli, and I didn't stay in a bubble. But in the same time, I didn't have any other Olim that were easy to connect to and to help me perhaps find work or social life or anything else. Mm-hmm. And so I spent the first 4 years running a different nonprofit here that was helping bring MBA students to do internships in Israel. And it was great because I ran it by myself.
What organization?
It was called InsideIL. It's been acquired by ITRAC, which brings second-degree students, whether in law, public policy, or business, to do kind of birthright-style trips.
That's cool.
The first organization was amazing because it brought 50% non-Americans and 90% non-Jews.
Oh,
And
fascinating.
so it felt really critical that these people were coming at this juncture of business
Totally.
school before they went back into the work world to spend time in Israel. And that's how Michael and I initially connected, because he understood that I had this experience and understanding of what it meant to build an organization that was focused on kind of global Jewish movement. And so we had a conversation and decided we want to work together and began building POCs. And Michael is someone who believes in building fast, failing, learning, and going again. And that's where we've been with Nevo, is figuring out that this isn't something that's going to bring more people, but that this is something that's going to focus on the people that have already made the decision to be here. How do we elevate them and make sure that they are continuing to pay it forward?
So one of the biggest challenges when you need community sometimes is when shit gets hard.
Yeah.
And after October 7th, things got really hard for individuals, families, the country, and that many people may have sensed that lack of community. And I think there was a pull for a lot of people, hey, come back, right? So like,
For sure.
and from a great place, like my business coach, he's in New Jersey, and he's an extremely secular Jew. And he's like, I have no idea how the hell you live there, why you choose to live there. It was like, and we joke about it all the time. And on the other hand, and then there were like also like very well-meaning people like Governor DeSantis helping Americans that were in Israel to get free flights out,
Right.
During the beginning of the war. And so there lacks kind of a sense of structure, community, because you don't have the family really more than anything.
Right.
What was it like? How did Nevo step in during that time?
It was a super complicated time for us, and it was huge learning, right? So from my personal experience, I had family on Near Oz that was murdered and taken hostage. And I work with one other woman. I have a partner called Abbey Onn. We actually have a third person now, but at the time there were two of us. And she is a mother of 5, and her husband was called up for hundreds of days of service over the last 18 months. So between the two of us, we professionally did not perform for Nevo in the early weeks and months of the war. And what happened was Nevo performed. These people from 23 countries who have this kind of global reach were able to do amazing, amazing things, and they did them without us. They didn't need a staff or leadership. They needed to connect to one another. Our WhatsApp group now, if I can show you snapshots of it, it's the most beautiful and amazing thing. They put together a supply chain organization from the United States and Europe that raised money, bought gear, flew it here, and then literally had people meeting at the airport and driving it to bases around the country. That I think that they impacted tens of thousands of soldiers and raised close to $500,000. And it was people within Nevo that had never met each other before.
That's
that just
awesome.
said, I'm in. We had a handful of people that put together the kind of international media briefings that didn't exist. That they just showed up at the Kiryah every day and said something isn't here. We are native English speakers and we're going to build this. And that was a kind of foundation of what Elon Levy was doing. The background of that was all Nevo. We had people who were advising families of hostage members, myself included. People from Nevo advised me on how to operate and helped me with all of the press and all of the strategy. I met a lot of government leaders in the early weeks, and I had people from the Nevo community that were saying, here's what you say to the Secretary of State versus to the President versus Congress people. I haven't studied government since I was 17, right? So there were all of these different strengths that people brought, and they were able to build community and message and fundraising all across the world because they knew that everyone else had their back and was going to help them do it. And this for us was one of the most amazing things, because we've always said that we want to see, that 1 + 1 is going to equal 3. And in this situation, it equaled 300, right? They operated on such a high level, and they said, I come to this WhatsApp group every day because I know that I'm going to feel inspired and motivated and more at home. And a lot of people in Nevo said that they felt like they made a second aliyah during the war, because they felt for the first time, if they hadn't served in the army, that they had a way to serve the country, and that they felt compelled and connected in a way that they hadn't before. And this, in essence, is what we're trying to encourage, not just in moments of need, but all the time.
Within this, one of the challenges everyone had after October 7th, kind of like you alluded to, was like kind of like Nevo almost went to the back burner professionally, but the
Right.
networking of itself did the work, is how do we integrate our professional lives and our personal lives? And in a sense, and then how can we also maybe lean on family or network or community to help kind of bring those together to make all this easier? I think that's something Israel's unique. It's like our community is the helping, right? The
Right.
Jewish geography. Who do you know? How can you help? Automatically being there to help one another. And I think that helps make the work-life integration easier.
Yes.
What's your thoughts and experience? Because you even had to step back from Nevo for a bit.
Right. So I can tell you that not only was Nevo valuable to me in those first weeks and months of the war from a professional point of view, but also from a personal point of view. I feel like as the director of this community that I'm the one that's supposed to help. And I had to really flip that and understand, how do I receive? How do I let people check in on me? How do I let people send food? How do I let people be in my house? I had one of the alumni babysit my children during moments when I had to go have meetings. And understanding that because I have integrated my family into my work, there is this feeling that it's okay, it's accessible in a sense. You know, we often host network members in our home for Friday night dinner and for Hagim.
Love that.
And it's this notion that this is our job, but this is also our home. Israel is our home, this job is my home. And so people are always welcome. And I think that opens up a kind of different line of communication of that this isn't just professional, but this is really communal, and that the kind of sense of belonging, those lines blur sometimes of I'm the director of a community, but I'm also a mom, and I'm also a family member of people that went through hard things during the war, and that we all are able to play a role. And I think that Nevo really stepped up in that sense.
And so for those that are, let's say, in general, are having trouble with the work and the personal life, for immigrants especially,
Yeah.
what do you recommend to them? Let's say they're beyond the Nevo network. Maybe they're older. Maybe they've older kids like I do.
Yeah. Look, I think as someone who is on the cusp of having older children, and also I just passed my 10-year Aliyah anniversary.
Woo!
I know, I'm not.
Would you throw a party?
I did not, because it feels like a weird time still to throw a party, but I
What if
did.
someone else throws it for you?
I will show up.
Okay, cool. Let's speak to the Nevo network.
Okay. You're deeply reminded that you still have to build yourself, that you need hobbies, that you need friends, that you need to know who you are in these moments of transition. And I think in the first 10 years in Israel, it was small children and a new country and then a pandemic and then a war. It's been an intense decade. And now, as I'm facing this new chapter, it's, scheduling travel with my husband. We're going to Italy later this month, and it is hobbies. I'm taking a dance class tonight.
What kind of dance?
Hip hop.
Nice.
Yeah, don't.
Avital also does
Yeah,
hip hop.
Okay.
She's behind the camera.
I will not share that video. But that is like a.
Now I know what I'm looking for.
That is a check your ego at the door, go in, and then what happens in the room stays there. I bake a lot of challah. Really, this is one of my biggest passions.
Why?
It's therapy.
Why?
I mean, I also believe in therapy, but it feels kind of connected on a cultural level, on a national level, on a personal level. And despite the fact that I think we have the best bakeries in the world here, my children request and demand my challah on a weekly basis.
Oh yeah? Can I get one of them?
Yeah, for sure.
Can I get one of challah?
And other than that, it's just kind of, I felt in my first years here that I was building networks professionally, and I wanted one to find me. I wanted it to be easier for me socially, and it wasn't. And so I had to build a lot of friendships. I had to really try hard to build friendships, and I still work on that because I believe that without them, it will be harder for me to stay here. There's not a Nevo for me.
So it's interesting, actually. I learned this a few years ago. It sticks with me because I'm also an employer. My team had 18 people. They said, what is the main reason that someone would leave employment, that would leave a job,
Yeah.
that prevents them, is that they have a good friend at work.
Right.
And in a sense, that just think about the network effect also for those that maybe might be going back after the make Aliyah.
Right.
I mean, if you're struggling with certain things, but like if you got a best friend that lives down the block, a few blocks away, that's your social life and your network, and
Yep.
you have a full overlap and you share your network or community.
It's
Suddenly, it's so, despite any other financial challenge, another challenge, you want to stay because you have a
Right.
fulfilling and meaningful and enjoyable day to day.
Right. When we talk about Maslow's hierarchy, right, there's
Right.
often these like basic needs: food, water,
Shelter,
housing.
yeah.
Sense of belonging is at the top.
Right.
That's kind of like you've reached nirvana.
Right.
For Olim, sense of belonging is critical. It's
Right.
foundational.
Right.
That's food, water, and housing.
Right.
And if you don't have sense of belonging, you're not going to stay here.
Right.
And if Olim don't stay here, Israel's not Israel.
Right.
This is a country built on immigrants. This is
Right.
a country built on diversity.
Right.
And as we're in this moment of significant challenge, if we don't get and keep amazing global talent in this country, we don't fulfill our potential. Michael is, risk averse or risk open to risk. Like he's happy to just try and see what works, and that's allowed us to move quickly and to to fail forward.
So with all the great things you're doing, are there any success stories that you can point to?
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, I think that they come often from moments of crisis. So in the aftermath of Russia invading Ukraine, we had two fellows who were about to build a network for Russian speakers, just a kind of regular network. And then they understood on a dime, they pivoted and said there's going to be a massive influx of Russian speakers coming into Israel. They built something, Daniil Chernov and Katerina Greenstein, with the help of Sophia Lupov-Tuz and others, something called Reboot Startup Israel, that in essence built a network of 15,000 Russian speakers that existed and came into Israel, and they helped 10% of them find jobs in tech. So something like that is saying you're investing in two people, and then they went out and invested and created something for 15,000.
Amazing.
Now there's also a Reboot for Spanish speakers that's caught a couple thousand Spanish speakers in tech. So things like this are really amazing. I talked a little bit before about Unit 107, which was this supply chain movement after the war started that was fundraising, buying, sending, and then delivering gear. And this included everyone from Gilly Fleekop all the way to Leah Schwartz to Daniil, who then took the Russian speakers from Reboot, and they really said in the day after the war, we don't know how to help, we're not sure what to do. And he turned and said, I'm gonna get the gear, and I'm gonna get all of them, and they're gonna be the delivery guys. And they started driving the gear, and they felt, we have a home here. We are part of this. And so I think that there's initiatives like that where you see it's not one person, it's always one plus, and that one plus equals so much more, and that this is really what the investment is supposed to be, is that you not only have the ability to create massive impact for Olim, for tech, but really for the state and the country of Israel. And our goal ultimately is that anyone coming to Israel, someone new, knows that they have someone waiting for them that's ready to help and make them feel at home.
Amazing. Well, so where we expect from here?
More. We are hopefully getting ready to put together a set of webinars. We're going to put together a program with Israelis so that we make sure that we don't just say Olim. And more, bigger, better.
If there's anything me or my network can do to help
You're
Nevo
already
Network,
doing it, you're mentoring.
please let us know. Yes, I am, and I'm privileged to do that. Thank you, Abbey Onn. If you're making Aliyah, want to get into tech, or if you're already here, more importantly, after a couple of years and you want to join the cohort, feel free to reach out to Abbey, or you can reach out to me directly and I'll make the introduction. If you haven't yet liked and subscribed, please do. And if you're on Apple or Spotify, please give us 5 stars. That helps us have a greater impact. Abbey Onn, we're totally blessed to have you as part of our greater community and everything you're doing for our ecosystem.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on IsraelTech.